Chamu and I both did the year's training, and it's taken a year to get trained into doing this. I'm now in my 4th year. One of the things that we do is guided walks, and one of the areas I'm going to be introducing you to is one that you could possibly explore, because it's one of the most beautiful parts of my particular area that I'm able to walk in. And it's called the Manifold Valley. So what I've got to try and do is to make the connection between the Manifold Valley, copper and lead, butter and milk, and silk and India. So I've got to do that in about 5 minutes. So I'll try and do that. I've got some maps of this, so perhaps I could pass these around later. But this is the Manifold Trail, which is actually a cycle trail, but it's also walkable. And it goes from a place called Hume End down to Waterhouses. And I think I heard you mention you've been to Ireland. Well, Ireland is there. And the Manifold Trail is a cycle route and a walking route, but it's actually on a disused railway. So it's very straightforward for walking. It's mainly tarmacked, or very easy to walk on track. In fact, I was able to participate in a guided walk for people with disabilities, and I was the back marker, and I was responsible really for taking the person who was going up the slowest, and she was a 92-year-old lady, and she was going like this. But we made it from Hume End to a place down here which is called Wetton Mill. So on the way, there's some things that you can actually see. So from Hume End, one of the key places is Ecton, where there's a disused copper mine. So interesting connection with India. Did any copper get exported from the UK to India? And Swainsley and the Swainsley Tunnel, given the name by Swainsley Hall, was the residence of somebody called Sir Thomas Wardle, who you may have come across in your research into silk, and then down to Wetton Mill and down to a place called Thor's Cave. So I'm going to be introducing you to these as possible places to visit. And when you get one of these maps out, they're going to be as complicated as that. So you can try and find this location on the maps that we've got here and actually trace a possible walking route. So Hume End, that's an old station shed, and it's got a nice visitor centre, and you'll see bikes which have come up from Waterhouses where there's a bike rental centre. And it was the old engine shed for this, which is the Leek and Manifold light railway. It's a light railway because it wasn't the full gauge, it was only about 2.5 feet gauge, and it had these sort of small engines and brightly coloured carriages. And its main purpose was to convey milk down to Waterhouses, so that's the milk and butter connection. But it also conveyed passengers. It ran from the early 1900s to 1934, and the main reason it closed down was because the creamery at Ecton closed, and the use of the railway for taking passengers to the little villages moved over to road transport. So if we then track down to the next place, which is Ecton. Ecton is famous for copper, and that's a copper spire. This is actually a visitor centre where you can use this as a base for exploring the copper mine, and parties of people are taken to the copper mine, and that's one of the pictures of it that you will actually be able to see. And I mean, it's interesting that there are actually boats that were used for taking the ore to the lift shaft, and then the lift shaft would take the ore up to the surface. If we go further south, to Swainsley Hall. Now the connection here with silk is Sir Thomas Wardle, and he bought Swainsley Hall in 1896, and apparently the house was full of trophies for the time he spent in India, and I don't know what that says about. I hope this isn't seen as plundering India, but obviously he brought some souvenirs back. And again, this seems rather a difficult thing to say, that one of his souvenirs was a Bengal tiger that had been shot. That's the picture of the house as it is now, and there's quite an interesting building here, which is like an old dovecot, which is actually on the banks of the Manifold Valley. But because he was also a director of the railway, he managed to get a tunnel built so that the railway wouldn't obscure his view. So his nice views were preserved by the creation of this tunnel. Now the walk actually goes through that tunnel on one of the routes, so it's quite interesting to walk through, and hope the lights don't go out. And further south takes you to Wetton Mill, which is a National Trust property, which used to be a mill a long time ago. It's now totally disused. There's no evidence of the mill apart from some mill races, and it was used for grinding corn. But up just above the mill, there's a very interesting cave that you can explore. It doesn't go very deep, but it's got some openings actually to the sky. And then taking you then further south to Thor's Cave, which is just a little bit further south. It's probably not a very good photo, but Thor's Cave is actually this geological feature there in the limestone. And the interesting thing about Thor's Cave and a number of other caves in the area is that when they were explored, there was quite a lot of evidence of early man using these caves, a lot of bones from different animals like bears, reindeer, and even dolphins. Now, how would you get a dolphin bone in a cave like this? Well, apparently there's possibly some association with early mysticism and early religion. So that's what I'm introducing you to. Then the Manifold Way. It carries on further south to Waterhouses, which, as I said, is a bike rental place. It's a total of 8 to 9 miles, depending on whether you go through the tunnel or whether you bypass to have a look at the hall. Now, whether that's too far for you to walk in a day, one possibility would be to actually walk from Hume End to Wetton Mill. So you could do that as a linear. And at Wetton Mill, there's a tea shop where you can get a nice cup of tea. So that's the walk we did as a guided walk, where I guided a 92-year-old person. So the 92-year-old person could do it. I'm sure everyone of you could do it. Okay, so that's just a brief introduction to the Manifold Valley and the Manifold Trail. It has been called the Switzerland of Staffordshire. So it's actually located in Staffordshire and is just south of Buxton, Bakewell, and easily reachable from Sheffield. So I hope that helps.